fingers, and all together, apparently we'll have almost 100 people together. All of us together are going to say, today the technology will work. Okay?
Yes.
So 1, 2, 3. Today the technology will work. Ah, look at that. It's already working. So I hope you're seeing my screen.
Yeah,
and oh, thank you, Casey. Promise me that you'll be there. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about the brain teaching model. And as I was saying before, when I prepared this talk, it was for the time in which we were free citizens and we went to school to teach. So I introduced a couple of things today that are more specific also for this strange situation in which we are in right now, which is going through a historical moment in our lives. This is the kind of thing that will appear in 20 years' time in history books and in language books. And I don't know, we are going to be asking, or our grandchildren are going to be asking us, where were you, Granny, when the COVID-19 smashed us? And therefore, it's very important to understand that as a teacher, what you do now is very, very important, but who you are is even more important. What people need right now is comfort. They need to feel that you are there for them. And what they will remember in 20 years' time is not how well you taught them the past tense of the regular verbs. Instead, they will remember how the teacher would call them once a week, or the teacher would prepare lessons that were dynamic and that included empathic access, asking about how they feel, and so on and so forth. So the idea today is to kind of understand a little bit more about the biology of learning. This is why we're going to be talking about the brain. And to begin with, I'm going to ask you to think about two things that you are particularly proud of. This is something that you have achieved throughout your lifetime. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is because when we talk about the brain, we know that the way you feel has everything to do with the way we think. And today I'd like you to take home as many ideas as possible, and therefore I need to turn on your cognitive brain. But I will not be able to turn on your cognitive brain if first I don't regulate your emotional brain. So I'm asking you to go positive and think in the middle of this tragedy, in the middle of quarantine. I want you to focus your brain on something bright, which is something you have achieved that you're very proud of, okay? And there are two things that I am particularly proud of. Let me share them with you. One of them is the fact that I was able to start a school from scratch, to co-found a school after being a teacher for almost 35 years. And this is a bilingual school in Buenos Aires. And the reason I am very proud of it is not only because I co-founded it and was the head of English there for a bit over 10 years, but because we have a program there of neuropsychoeducation that starts in kindergarten and goes all through cuarto media, which means that in my school, we teach people about how their brain works. And obviously, the bigger picture is to tell you that the thing I am most proud of is to be the mother of Juan and Jasmine. I guess this is my legacy. I believe that if you can plant two good human beings in the world, you've done your share of good deeds. Okay, so these are the two things I'm very proud of. I will be reading if anybody wants to share situations, people, things that you are very proud of. I'm going to check the chat, all kinds of things. Using backgrounds. This is interesting what Rita is telling us. Using backgrounds diminishes internet signal. Wow. Thank you, Rita. I will remove the background as soon as I can do that. Thank you for saying so. So, I hope you were all thinking about your positive things. So I've introduced myself with 2 things I am proud of. And now it's time for you to introduce yourselves. So this activity is called Just Like Me. And in the activity, what I'm asking you to do is to read the different activities that I will be posting here that I believe are common to every single human being over the world who is undergoing COVID-19, the quarantine, and so on and so forth. So I have included activities that I believe we are doing now that we are not allowed to go outside. So every time you see an activity that speaks for you and that you think, ah, yes, I am doing this, or yes, I am this, I'm going to ask you to stand up and sit down, and at the same time to say, just like me. Okay? So I'm not able to see you. I'm going to trust that you're doing it. So listen to the music. I remember to remove the background as soon as possible. Just listen to the music and read the sentences. Here I go.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.
Yeah, just like me.
All girls all over the world. Original man, stop man, pon your case, man. I love how all
Yeah,
girls
just
are
like
move
me.
them body. And when you move your body, wanna move it nice and sweet and sexy. Alright? Woman, you cute.
So I couldn't see what you were doing, but basically the idea was to invite you to say hi and to introduce yourselves by checking out things that, although we are all in different places, different homes, and even different countries, we are sharing COVID-19, obviously, but we are also sharing some ways of dealing with it. So I always recommend when you are preparing a virtual lesson to introduce yourselves, use humor, use music, but also allow people to introduce themselves. In this particular activity, you are moving a little bit and you're listening to music, and music and movement are 2 brain compatible elements. So right from the start, I'm sharing with you 2 tips that are going to be very useful, especially in the virtual lesson, in the synchronic or the asynchronic lesson. Now, if you have been overeating over this quarantine, don't worry, because I will be only talking about these curves. We are not going to be referring to the other curves of your body, and it is okay if you've gained weight, because the brain is in survival mode and has been in survival mode for the last 160 days. And therefore, for many, many people, eating is the pleasure that is not coming from other activities we used to do. So be kind on yourself if you have gained weight. But don't worry, because today we won't talk about that. We will talk about the curves up here. A couple of days ago, one of the brightest minds in education passed away, Sir Ken Robinson. This is my way of honoring him. This is me in a Learning and the Brain conference a couple of years ago. I had the immense honor of meeting him and chatting with him. We were talking about his latest book. And one of the things he said that day in that conference was, when something doesn't work in a school, in a company, an institution, whatever, don't blame the people. Blame the system. So what has happened right now? Things that were working in the face-to-face school don't work anymore in the virtual classroom. So we have gone out there to be flexible and to start changing the system. We have had overnight to stay in touch with people, with parents and with students in a different way. And the good thing is that we are being able to sustain education. Now, the thing is, when we go back to our classrooms, when we go back to the face-to-face, are we going to go back to the past? Or are we also going to change the system when we go back to the building? So I'm throwing some ideas at you, okay? This is the way we should always plan a virtual classroom, a virtual lesson. If you want the lesson to be organic, enjoyable, and memorable. Yes or yes, always have an introduction. It doesn't matter if the lesson is a 15-minute lesson or if it is a 2-hour lesson. Always introduce either yourself or talk about good news that happened either in the neighborhood or over the world, or maybe start with, did you know that kind of answer, question or whatever, but there needs to be some kind of warm-up. What I did with you was think of 2 things that you are proud of. And then there has to be an exchange. This is the participants also are invited to say who they are. And if you are more than 100 people, it's very difficult for me to ask who you are and where you come from. So at least we're doing something together. We were starting to have a sense of belonging, although we are all in different places and we are all people who maybe haven't met each other, but we were starting to work as a group. This is our social brain. We were sharing activities that we have been doing through the quarantine, and we were starting to behave as a group. The rest of the lesson plan is going to keep appearing as we go. So this is going to be the agenda. So once we have introduced ourselves, we have moved a little bit, we have listened to music, we are ready to share the topics that will be covering today's presentation. So we are going to be, this is an acronym, the BRAIN thing is an acronym for brain compatible elements. Again, just like music and just like movement, the body, rapport or the emotional brain, attention, interactions, relationships, and this possibility of connecting the old knowledge with the new knowledge and making networks. These are going to be the core of my talk today. I'm going to be talking about how learning has everything to do with the body, with rapport and emotions, with how you pay attention, how you sustain attention, how you interact with people, and finally, how you can learn if you can relate the new to the old. So let's begin with the first one. The first one is the body. Learning has to do not only with what happens from the neck upwards, which is what my teachers used to think 50 years ago. I forgive them. It was before neurosciences. But now we know that learning involves the whole body. And learning is a biological process. First of all, it is a biological process because it starts somewhere physically, and it starts here. So if we are teachers, we need to know a little bit more about the organ that is going to do the learning, but also about your own organ that is going to do the teaching. So what do we know now? We know that we learn with our entire body, and we know that movement is crucial, not only when you are in kindergarten, but throughout our lives. The part of the brain that is in charge of our movement, our fine movement and our gross movement is called cerebellum. And it is right here, like in the back part of your brain. And the part of you that does the thinking, the part of you that is paying attention, taking down notes, analyzing, organizing your next trip, hopefully overseas, maybe in summer. This part is called the frontal lobes, and it's here. And it is the most wonderful part of the brain. The most intelligent part of your brain is this, your frontal lobes. And guess what? Through neurosciences, we have learned that these 2 apparently different structures work together all their lives. So movement anchors thought. Not only when you are in kindergarten, but if today I give you a couple of instances of you moving as you are learning, this is the kind of thing that you will remember today at 8 p.m. when you sit down and have dinner, and maybe your wife or your husband asks you, what were you doing from 6 to 7? And then there are chances you will remember because you had to do stuff, not only sit passively there. So remember, movement and learning are inescapably linked. So remember Ken Robinson. One of the things he says when he says, let's change the system is, let's make the educational system more organic. So if kids and adolescents and adults need to move in order to learn, why are we having them sitting on desks from 8 to 5 p.m.? Okay, so let's think about this when we return to the normal classroom, right? Okay, and I want you to watch this video while I manage the sunlight that is pouring through the window, because this is one of the guys I recommend if you want to start telling your students about the brain science, and you obviously need to adapt it to make it simple, to make it fun. So you can go to YouTube and search Dr. John Medina, who's kind of I don't know, of a very informal doctor, and kids will love him. And he has a book called Brain Rules, which is a bestseller. And today I'm only including one of the brain rules. Enjoy.
Scandal number 1, where the only mystery lies in why we're not fixing it. If you were to design an almost perfect anti-brain learning environment, it would look something like this. And if you were to design an almost perfect anti-brain working environment, it would look something like this. Why? Because tiny proteins called BDNFs are actually created when you exercise and act like Miracle-Gro for your...
Sorry.
Brain rule number 1, exercise boosts brain power. So, this is your child's brain in the classroom. This is your child's brain on the playground. At least if he's moving. And likewise, this is your brain at work. And this is your brain walking to work. Let's look at that in the actual setting. Here are your kids in the classroom. And here are your kids on the playground. And, once again, here is your employee at work. And here is your employee on the way to work. The problem lies in the fact that we measure distance today in terms of the space between the refrigerator, bathroom, and couch. Says Robert Hutchins, whenever I feel like exercise, I lie down until the feeling passes. Our ancestors, on the other hand, walked an average of 12 miles a day, and hence the brain developed as a survival organ that was designed to solve problems in an unstable environment in almost constant motion. If our ancestors had laid around, well, let's just say that evolution didn't favor the sedentary types.
Okay, so you get a picture. In general, we design classrooms that are anti-brain, which mean classrooms in which kids are asked to sit there when their entire body can be doing the learning. So if you want to know more, go to the YouTube and you will have all the brain rules, and you will understand a little bit more why we need to get movement into the lesson, even into the virtual lesson, which is what I'm going to be doing with you in a couple of slides, okay? Now, because we learn with our entire body, we need to understand that there are sources of energy that are natural to us and that can help us to strengthen our immune system and to bring up our levels of energy. So the reason some kids are not learning is not because they are slow learners. It may be because they are not sleeping well. It may be because they are not eating properly. It even may be because they're not moving. They are living in a very small flat, no chances of running outside because we are not allowed to. So we need to understand that learning is organic and studying is a part of it. But if you study a lot and you haven't eaten before the test, or you slept only 2 hours the night before, probably your brain will not have the energy it needs to bring back from long-term memory what you were able to study. And the fourth source of energy, the little brain there, is called the blissful state of the mind. So especially when you are undergoing a pandemic, you need to do things to quiet the noise in your head, this constant noise of when will this COVID finally be over? Will I be able to travel and have holidays during summer? Will I be able to pay my bills? And so on and so forth. So our brain is constantly focusing on the inevitable. And this is something that we cannot control because this is much bigger than ourselves. So apart from eating properly, sleeping 7 to 8 hours a day, and remembering to move and to do something regularly, we also need to have some kind of tool to bring down or to bring the peace of mind. And I think we should be teaching people about this, okay? I hope to share an idea with you later on. So this is going to be a brain break. And for the brain break, we are going to stretch, because I have another talk a couple of weeks from here, which is based entirely on brain breaks. And I'm going to be sharing there with you like 15 brain breaks. So I don't want to repeat myself. A brain break is a pause between moments of instruction. So I have been teaching some stuff to you, basically the 4 sources of energy and so on and so forth, and how movement is related to thinking. And you have been paying attention, external, sustained attention. And this kind of attention consumes a lot of energy. So we are going to do a pause so that we can regain energy. What are we going to do now? We are going to stretch ourselves. I'm going to stop sharing, basically so that I can remove this thing, the fondo that you told me. I don't even know how I do this. How do I say I don't want?
Next to your camera, the thing where you start your video sharing of your video.
Yeah.
There's a bullet, and then click the little arrow, and it'll open up the menu, and then you can just.
I have the menu. I have the menu, but I don't know what to press so that it disappears.
Go to none in the virtual background. Go to none.
Yeah, believe it or not, I don't have the option none. Okay, so
that's static.
Oh my God, I don't know what to do. So this is horrible. Bueno, bear with me until I decide or I realize how to do it. So we are going to stretch now, and the stretching goes like this. This is an activity that you can do when you feel that you are exhausted, especially of sitting always in the same upright position in front of a screen. So we are going to stretch first our right arm as much as you can, and when you are almost about to touch the ceiling, then you bring your arm behind your head, and with your other hand, you go behind your back and you touch your fingers. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, then you go back to normal and you do the same thing with the other arm. You stretch until it touches the ceiling. You go behind your head, and with your other hand behind your back, you touch your fingers. So you should do this 5 times and breathe while you're doing it, okay? And this could also be a brain break for you. So let me go back to my screen now. I hope you were with me there. So we can move on to the second brain compatible element. Remember, the first one was the B, and the B stood for brain. And when we talk about brain, we talk about body and how learning is an organic process. Second one, learning has everything to do with emotion. Emotions always come first because the brain works from the most primitive part of the brain to the most evolved part of the brain, from downstairs brain to upstairs brain. So if you want to teach English to people, you need to understand that what you are teaching is not going in through the clever brain. everything goes in first to your instinctive emotional brain, and only if you're feeling like the baby on the left, which means if you're relaxed, if you're happy, if you're not afraid, then your primitive system allows for the cognitive system to start working. So rapport is huge, and we need to understand that in our brain we have two systems: a very fast instinctive emotional system, almost here like the back of your in your neck. This is the part of your brain that has been turned on around March the 20th and has never ever stopped working like mad, because we are in survival mode. This is an unconscious brain that turns on completely automatically. There's nothing you can do about it. It has to do with heartbeat, breathing, the temperature of your body, all those functions that you don't have to think of. So this very, very primitive part of you has been working 24/7 ever since March the 20th, because this part of your brain is very worried about keeping you alive and keeping you safe from COVID. And the problem is that when this system has gone override or berserk, the slow system, the cognitive system, finds it hard to work better. So you will notice that under chronic stress, which is the kind of stress we have for almost 6 months, under chronic stress, you don't make very interesting decisions. You find it hard to learn new stuff. Being creative is a luxury. So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and we need to understand that if we want to teach our students the first type conditional, which is we need to turn on the slow system, we can only do that by cooling off the fast system. So thinking and feeling are connected. It's like a dance, okay? I'm going to stress this. So this is not a very good idea, you see, if you want to help people to feel safe in your classroom. We need to find other tools other than threatening people, especially now that we don't know how to get our adolescents to turn on the cameras. It's never a good idea to say, because I say so, or because it is a rule. There are many, many other things we have to negotiate, but this is for another talk. And there are very clever ways of having people turning on their cameras. Now, I want you to watch this video now, and I'm going to only show you a little piece in which you will understand the importance of learning about your organic brain. So this is the B, the body we had at the beginning, and this is also the rapport. In this very short video, you can have the link down there, and you will all receive the PDF of my presentation, so you can watch it later on in the calm of your house and in your couch. So have a look at this very brief video and explaining more about the brain.
Feelings and emotions too. It's normal to feel all different kinds of emotions: happy, sad, worried, or stressed. One of the things that we know for sure is that our emotions have a big impact on the way we learn. Feelings of stress or anxiety can make it very difficult for someone to learn. When you feel threatened or worried, your brain is programmed to trigger the release of chemicals such as adrenaline and cortisol into your body. These chemicals quickly alter the way you think, feel, and behave, making it difficult to think clearly or take in new information. Scientists believe that we learn best when we are happy and relaxed. That is when our brain processes information most efficiently.
Okay, so I'm going to show you this game that we are going to play, that you can play almost everywhere, which means you can do it virtually and in the face-to-face classroom. It is called Two Facts and a Fib. A fib meaning, in Chile, I think they call it chiva, which is a lie. So I show you the video, and now I'm asking you if you can remember two facts from the video, two things that the voice in off said, and one thing that you have to kind of change a little bit so it's not really true. How do you play the game? When you have your students sitting there behind the screen, each one of them has to write down the two facts and a fib. And then what you do is you put up the page in which they wrote it so that everybody can see. and the rest of the class has to see if they can spot which two are facts and which is a lie from those three. We don't have time to do that, so I'm going to show you the video again, and then we are going to play a different game.
Feelings and emotions too. It's normal to feel all different kinds of emotions: happy, sad, worried, or stressed. One of the things that we know for sure is that our emotions have a big impact on the way we learn. Feelings of stress or anxiety can make it very difficult for someone to learn. When you feel threatened or worried, your brain is programmed to trigger the release of chemicals such as adrenaline and cortisol into your body. These chemicals quickly alter the way you think, feel, and behave, making it difficult to think clearly or take in new information. Scientists believe that we learn best when we are happy and relaxed. That is when our brain processes information most efficiently.
Okay, so instead of doing the two facts and a fib, you can also show some of the facts, which is what I'm going to do now, and we are going to play like a true and false. So if what you see there is a fact, you're going to clap. If what you see there is not a fact, something that did not appear in the video, then you're going to nod. Ready? Ready, steady, go. What about this one? So one idea is for them to individually write down two facts and a fib and then show them. This is why you need the screen, you see? And the other peers have to try and spot the two facts and the fib. Rapport has everything to do with cognition. Why? Because the way you feel has everything to do with the way you think. And emotions can be either a wall that prevents you from learning, or a bridge that helps you learn. So the way you feel has everything to do with learning or not a second language. So if people come to you with classic, I will never be able to learn English, it is impossible for me, the way they feel is working as a wall. And first thing you need to do before you start teaching them anything is to change that mindset. And how do you change that mindset? By changing the system, by remembering that nobody can think properly if they are too scared, if they are too worried, and so on. So we need to start working on the emotion first. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas now. Okay? So first of all, we need to get them talking about how they feel. And in your culture, in Chile and in Argentina, we are not very used to that, to doing that. Emotions are something very uncomfortable that we prefer to pretend are not there. So this is something I found in Facebook, which is fantastic. There are all 9 famous paintings, and they all portray different emotions. So take a couple of seconds to see which painting reflects better how you feel right now. Okay, so a couple of seconds, and if you want to share with me, I am more like number 8. I would always say 8, pisco sour, perfect for this time of the day. But if you want to share something else, I'll be, look, yeah, somebody says, I'm 2, I'm 8. Soledad, you're number 6. This is really terrible, Soledad, because whatever I do, I won't be able to get you out of that. But I'll try to do my best, okay? So this is a way of having people talk in a humorous way about how they feel. So you can start with activities like this, in which more than saying how I feel, it's like, I think that painting number 3 reflects who I am, okay? So find ways of talking about feelings and making the emotion something that it is okay to start talking about that. When you teach little ones, when you teach kindergarten, I thought it was a good way to compare emotions, which is something that they don't know about and they don't understand. And you ask them, how do you feel? And they say, I don't know. So then you compare something old that they know about with something new that they don't, which is the weather, especially in kindergarten and in the first 3 grades in primary school. We insist a lot about what's the weather like today. So what I started doing was, okay, it is a sunny day. And what is your weather like today? So maybe it is very sunny outside, but here it feels cloudy because I know that my grandmother is ill and I can't see her. So what you're doing here is you are comparing, or you're making metaphors by saying that your emotion is like a cloudy day, like a sunny day, and so on. But we need to find, and this is something you can do obviously in the virtual classroom, to ask people in the beginning, okay, show them pictures of the weather and maybe tell them to put up their hands when they feel that they are in the, I don't know, rainy day or whatever it is. You could use it as a warm-up as well. Always remember to tell people what the lesson is going to be about. Share with them the agenda, especially during COVID. Why? Because uncertainty is letting us, it's making us unable to think properly. Everything is uncertain. So we need to give some kind of routine and certainty to our lessons so that kids know, yes, I know that my teacher always begins with a warm-up. And I know that at some moment there is going to be a break, and so on and so forth, okay? So agendas are important. Help them recognize emotions. These are some cards that you can download for free. I work at Asociación Educar, and www.asociacioneducar.com, and you have a lot of free material for teachers there. And you can download the cards of emotions, and what I did was simply put the vocabulary in English, but then start asking your kids to recognize how they feel by what is going on in my face. My face tells me how I feel, and how do I recognize emotions in others also. This is something I wrote in a book I wrote a couple of years ago, was how to use English to teach social emotional skills. Okay, my idea was, while you're teaching English, English is the excuse. While you're teaching English, you are teaching people to think critically, you're teaching people to delay gratification, to learn how to work in teams, and so on. And the other thing, which would be ideal, especially now, is teach your students how to regulate emotions. Our students are really suffering, and they don't know how to stop suffering. So we need to give them tools. Here, this is me teaching them how to meditate before they sat for the international exams, the Cambridge exams. But now I'm teaching them virtually, breathing exercises, yoga exercises, or meditations, okay? This is the kind of thing people need to learn from us now. We are going to stop. This is another activity you can do, obviously, through your screen. Ask them to think about their own names, and then to write a positive adjective that starts with the first letter of their name. So my name is Lucrecia, and my positive adjective is going to be loyal. So, hi, my name is Loyal Lucrecia. And then I asked my students, okay, can you write down your name? And as you can see in the chart, some people understood the instructions and some people did not, which is why I am sharing it with you, so you can also have a laugh with me, okay? So lovely Luz, she got it, positive adjective, and it starts with the first letter of her name. But look at this one. Number 7, Nicolas. I don't think Nicolas understood the assignment. But then you had Red Renzo. I don't think red is an adjective. Haha, but this is for us to laugh a little bit. Then you have people who got it, like very hilarious Vicky. This is the kind of warm-up or brain break you can do in the class by asking people to attach their name to a positive adjective. Again, what you're doing, the reason you are doing this is not to practice adjectives. It is to quiet down your emotional brain, to calm down the uncertainty. Why? Because you're focusing on your bright spots. You're focusing on your strengths, on something you are good at, even in the middle of a language class, okay? So take that idea home as well. So each one of you, think of your name, think of a positive adjective. This is a way you could introduce yourselves to your students. Hi, everyone. I'm Lawyer Lucrecia, and who are you? And then you can play a game with the different people who appear in your screen. So we did B for body, and we did R for rapport, and we are moving into A for attention. And there is a specialist I want to recommend you that is called Judy Willis. I studied with her in the States, and then I brought her to Argentina. I convinced her to come to Argentina, and she did some very intense professional development in Argentina. And she says that if you want to understand how the attention works, you need to remember these 3 letters, RAD. For her, attention has to do with an R, an A, and a D. Let me explain. First of all, how do you grab people's attention? Through images. Use images. I'm almost certain that all of you are looking at your screen like this right now. So, take a couple of seconds to see how many famous people you can spot in this picture. And if you want, you can share the people you are noticing and finding in the chat box, okay? I'm going to share one of them. I have discovered Einstein. Maybe you have found, yeah, muy bien, no. Bruce Lee, mira bien, Bruce Lee, Marx, very good, Lincoln. Okay, keep going. I'm going to bring my phone. So I can keep track of the time. Okay, so if you want to grab people's attentions, use an image. Now, what is this image doing? The image is turning on the R in the RAD. The R in the RAD stands for reticular activating system, RAS to make it simple, which is a part inside your primitive emotional brain that is turned on when something it listens, hears, or sees, or touches interests this structure. So the world outside comes into your brain through your 5 senses. But we already know that from those 5 senses, the visual sense is kind of 97% of what we take in. So if we're teaching people, we need to use more images than words. So I used an image and I immediately turned on your reticular activating system, your R. But now I want you to keep paying attention. So how do I do that? Okay, so I need to ask things to make you curious, even more curious. For example, did you know that there are very strange jobs that can pay a lot of money? Like this one. Believe it or not, this is a true job. And this is a guy who dives into golf courses to look for lost balls. And he earns $100,000 a year for doing that. So you may all be thinking, oh, okay, I know what to do if I quit teaching. But basically what I'm doing here is holding your attention. And the other thing I hope I'm doing is making it humorous so that you're not afraid of not knowing the answer. Because once you pay attention and your RAS is turned on, there is a part in your brain called amygdala that is like a radar trying to check for threats in the environment. So you may be interested in paying attention, but if what I'm sharing with you is too difficult, if I talk with very, I don't know, technical words, then your amygdala will say, yes, it's interesting, but I can't do this. So you were paying attention, but you move away. So everything has to go past this filter. Krashen will call it the emotional filter, okay? In neurosciences, it's the amygdala. So if you want people to keep paying attention, make sure you remove the stress, you remove the fear, because otherwise, although the activity is interesting, People will not buy into it. When does the amygdala turn on? Look at this. So especially before there is a test, you need to do something to bring the right level of emotion, because people may have studied a lot, but they are anxious, they are shy, so they don't want to open their mouths, whatever. So you need to do some kind of activity, either the stretching or the breathing. I'm going to show you something right now to bring down your primitive emotional brain so that you can turn on your clever you. So I'm sorry that I'm rushing, but I know that I have like 5 minutes to go. Okay, let's see if I can get to the D. So you're interested by looking at the image. That turns on your RAS. You are not afraid, you are comfortable, you feel at ease. So your amygdala says you can keep on processing. This is called upshifting. And the most wonderful thing happens after that. Your hypothalamus releases dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that aids synapses. So this is the kind of chemical you want in your classroom and in your virtual classrooms. You want the brains of your students to be bathed in dopamine so that they can, understand. How can you do that? Let them move, let them talk to each other, let them think, yes, I will be able to, and also help them to help others. Because when you help other people, the people who are absent, or give them a chore in which they have to sit and read to grandma or whatever, anytime you do an act of kindness, your own brain rewards you by bathing you in dopamine. Okay, so this is the kind of thing we didn't know when we became teachers, but we know now. I don't have time for this, don't kill me, but I have to move away so that I get to the end. B for body, R for rapport, A for attention, I for interaction. Learning has everything to do with relationships. If the kids get along with you, they will learn anything. If the kids don't get along with you, ooh, lost battle. So the brain is social. And this is one of the reasons why we are aching, because we are not being able to be with the people we love and to hug the people we love. This means that we are suffering, and the brain is really suffering because of the lack of interaction. So we have to find ways of interacting with our students. This is an idea that I put into practice in the face-to-face classroom, but it could work in the virtual world. And this is to have a system of tutors. So the elder student is the tutor of the youngest one. Ideal to do in media, in secondary school. So cuarto media student who's about to leave school is the tutor for somebody in primero media, which means they are going to be phoning, okay, is there anything I can help you out with? And this is having an extra brain and an extra heart taking care of you. So this is a good idea. So here you have in Spanish what they said. Why is this a good idea?
Me gustó tener un padrino así, tenía alguien que me guíe para darme consejos sobre el primer año, porque ellos ya pasaron toda esta etapa, y también para poder conocerme con más grandes.
Okay, so they are very happy to have a tutor. What happens in the social brain is when you feel that you belong, this is that there is somebody out there that is thinking of you, that will help you out if you're in need, then you activate the part of your brain that is related to pleasure, which is called nucleo accumbens. This is the part of the brain that is activated when, for example, you are having dinner with your best friend. Then you could see, if you had a scan of your brain, how this part of the brain is activated. And this part of the brain is activated through sharing, through being with other people. And the problem is that we are not being able to do this for the last 6 months. So we need to understand how people are feeling before we try to teach them anything, okay? Finally, another brain break, because I'm almost running out of time. And the brain break can also be images. For example, with the little ones, I play images of clouds that simply pass by and maybe music. This is simply to give them this little bit of relax from paying external attention that is very demanding. Okay, so this, I'm being humorous here, but this can also be a brain break. Okay, so let's go to the last one. Let's see if we remember the others. Brain, and the B stands for body, the R stands for rapport, the A stands for attention, the I stands for interaction, and finally the N stands for network. What I'm doing throughout the presentation is repeating. Why do you think I'm doing this? Because the brain will only make a strong connection if I keep going over it. So if I teach things and then I never repeat them again, by the end of today's talk, you've already forgotten. So I need to repeat every now and then to bring back this idea of body, rapport, and so on and so forth. So finally, the human brain is not organized for linear thoughts. This is, your brain doesn't learn first the A, and when I already know how to use the A in a sentence, I will learn the B. This is not the way the brain learns. The brain learns in chaos. And what the brain loves to do is to find order in chaos. So when you're trying to teach somebody about the parts of the body, the brain of the student is trying to connect what you are teaching with, yes, I saw that movie, and now I understand what my mother told me. So the brain doesn't think sequentially. Exactly the opposite. So what we know is if we want people to learn English, we need to help them to link what you're teaching, the content that you're teaching, the grammar point, the vocabulary, to something else. And if you can link it to something that is interesting and significant for them, the better. So this is why CLIL worked, because you are teaching English through maybe a painting or through a moment in history. So the idea is, while you are teaching a concept or vocabulary or whatever it is, link it to something that your student is interested in. Even if you're teaching Shakespeare and they will begin by saying, what a bore, you can find ways of connecting Shakespeare to soap operas. I've done this. So what does Shakespeare and soap operas have in common? Both Shakespeare and soap operas are always about the rich and the poor. There's always somebody who is evil and somebody who is good, and so on and so forth. But you make the learning significant. Finally, there's already a lot of research on what kind of teaching is more memorable. So here, Marzano, Pickering, and Pollack, who are specialists in curriculum development in the United States, a couple of years ago, had this study going on which are the activities that we use in the classroom to teach English that are more memorable. So for example, when you ask questions, the typical, Q&R in the classroom, or you ask them to make a diagrama de Venn or to complete an organizer, students tend to remember more or less 20% of what you taught. But look at number one. When you compare and you contrast what you're teaching with something they know about, this makes them remember much more. So if you have to teach the part of the body, try to link it, for example, in general, we do this. We try to link it to their favorite cat or dog or whatever, because they love them. So they want to know the names of the parts of the body. For example, today I'm talking about the brain. And maybe not all of you know a lot about the brain, but you all know what a sieve is, colador, where you put the noodles and the noodles stay there and the water doesn't. So I'm asking you, okay, how can the brain be like a sieve? This is, what does the brain and a sieve have in common? So maybe you don't know much about the brain, but if I ask you to compare it, you know that the sieve is not, it's not all sizes. It has a certain size, so not everything out there can go inside a sieve. The same happens with the brain. Not everything that goes in stays there. and so on and so forth. So when you're teaching, you need to make relationships with the content you're teaching and the book they read, the movie they saw. You need to listen to the music they listen to so that you know what is significant to them. So it's not about not teaching the content because they think it is boring. It is making it meaningful to them. So an hour has passed, and this is a photograph of you completely messed up. What was the R? What did it stand for? What was the I in the end? So what should we do at the end of a lesson? We should recap. There is a study that was done a couple of years ago on what do people remember after a lesson, and very sad news for you folks. Apparently, 2 hours after the learning, we remember less than 20%. So if I don't recap and I don't repeat, today by 10 p.m., you almost don't remember a thing. So we also need to teach kids how they are going to remember what we are teaching them. So let's see if you remember the letters that were in my acronym. The acronym was BRAIN. Hold on. And these are the words that I used to explain each one of them. Let's see if you can remember from the B, body. Try to see if you remember the names of the sources of energy. 4, natural. Natural means no pisco sour, no whiskey, no chocolate. Natural sources of energy, because the body needs energy and the brain needs energy to function. Okay, think about that and see if you remember them, okay? Yes, exercise. A lot of you are telling me movement. Remember proper food, and also the blissful state of the mind. Have some kind of practice. Maybe it is yoga, maybe it is cooking, maybe it is praying, whatever helps you calm down your emotional system. Then we had the importance of emotions and how crucial emotion is to learning. I don't have time to go into this. Attention, and we had the image, how to sustain attention, remove the stress. Interaction, we learn when we make bonds with the people we are learning with. And finally, we learn by connecting the new to the old. So finally, I'm going to show you some of the things we did today so that you take this idea home, okay? So we did a couple of brain breaks. One of them was this, stretching out, okay? Then I explained to you the activity of 2 facts and a fib. This is writing down 2 facts from the video and something that was not true. Then I gave you the idea of starting to use the weather as a metaphor for asking people to talk about how they feel. We did at the beginning the just like me introduction with all the things we are doing in this lockdown. We did not do positive adjectives, but we did think of your name and a positive adjective. And we did not do the other 2 because I was running out of time. Here, this is what we call recapping passports. You can go to Google and write down recapping passports or recapping ideas, or go to Google Images, and you will find things like this. Before you wrap up the lesson, ask people to choose from one of these tasks and let them tell you, maybe in the chat box, 1 sentence to summarize what I learned today, or a question you have. And you can read the chat box. You can also have them turn on the mic and speak to you. The thing is, let them use the information that you taught them, okay? Let them manipulate the knowledge and do it at the end, because the brain remembers beginnings and ends, and the end has to be memorable. So remember to repeat, and this is why we are repeating and asking you to see if you can recap. Finally, always finish up with a note of hope, especially during lockdown, because we are so sad and we are so worried, and there are so many things in our minds that we have to bring our brain, like kind of be in the driver's seat, and bring our brain to spot the bright side of COVID. And believe me, there are bright sides to COVID. There's going to be a transformation of education, and that is going to be very positive. So wherever you are, I want you to read with me this manifesto, because this is what I believe about you teachers. In Argentina, tomorrow we celebrate Teachers' Day. So in honor to you, you are the heroes of this pandemic. Please, even if you don't know anything about neurosciences, you are still enough. You're a human being, you are passionate, you worry about your kids. So let's say together the You Matter Manifesto. 1, 2, 3. You are enough. You have influence. You are a genius. You have a contribution to make. You have a gift that others need. Your actions define your impact. You are the change. You matter. So please give yourself a pat in the back, because you are doing wonders. Congratulations. I hope I've been of some kind of use. And from here, I'm sending you a huge hug. And I rest in the hands of Casey. This is my mail in case you want to email me. And remember, you're going to have this presentation as soon as this is over. This is me with all my students the day that they were graduating a couple of years ago.
Excellent.
Hey, you're back, Casey.
Yes.
Bueno, a photo of you by now. So, are there any questions I need to answer?
Sure, Felipe?
Yes, Lucrecia, we have a couple of questions that people asked in the chat. The first one is about the body, and how can we add movement to our online lessons with university students that don't turn on their cameras and hardly interact during the lesson?
Yeah, this thing of turning on the cameras, as I kind of threw the subject at you, is basically, I've been studying about that also, especially from teachers who work at universities, and there's a list of things, but basically the number one thing is negotiate with them. Don't give them the order, you all have to turn on the cameras, because there is already research saying that it may be healthy to turn off the camera, because we are living in very kind of stressful times. So for a lot of people, the camera on and having to stay upright and pretending that they are okay is too much. So there is already research saying maybe we shouldn't insist on asking them to turn on the camera. So number one, negotiate. And number two, plan your lessons with activities that are going to be better if they have the cam on, which means they are going to want to have it on. So for example, one of the things that adolescents like is when you tell them, okay, you have 2 minutes to find something in your home. You have to bring, for example, something round, something green, and an old photograph. And 2 minutes, ready, steady, go. So they have to run around the house and try to find those items. And when they come back, they want to show the item. So they want to turn the camera on. But basically, number three, maybe recommendation, which is number one, is work on the relationship. Nothing is going to happen if you don't have a powerful relationship with them, regardless of the age. And to work with a relationship means call them once a week, not to talk about the subject, to talk about how you're holding up, is there anything I can do for you, and tell them how you are holding up. So you need to build a strong relationship with students so that they will want to turn the camera on because they know they make you happy, basically.
Great, so there we have a couple of strategies to make students turn on their cameras. And there's another teacher who was very interested in this topic, and actually she would like to read a couple of books. So she asks, could you recommend any author books about this topic so we can keep learning?
Oh yeah, I have thousands of, one of the authors I recommend a lot is the one I show you today, Judy Willis. All these books you can get through Amazon. Okay, but maybe you have them also in Chile. Judy Willis is not published in Spanish yet, but apparently we can all read her in English. Judy Willis is a neuroscientist, and later became a teacher, which is why I recommend her, because she adopted two little girls and one of them struggled through school. So she decided to become a teacher so that she understood better how to help her out. So all the books written by Judy Willis are very practical. It's like the downloading the theory into the everyday practice. So Judy Willis is a big one. Eric Jensen is also an educator. So whatever you buy from Jensen is, this is the theory, what does this mean to you? And how do you apply it? David Sousa. David Sousa wrote like the Bible of neurosciences, which is called How the Brain Learns. And it's like in the 10th edition or something. And How the Brain Learns is a very powerful book. And you can also buy mine, which is fantastic. And in some part of Chile, they may have it. But I could also send a list of more books to read. But those three are good to start with. Judy Willis, I repeat, Judy Willis, Eric Jensen, David Sousa, and for the positive psychology, which we all need now, Dr. Seligman. Dr. Seligman is a huge one who can help us out a lot, especially in lockdown.
Lucrecia, Benjamin asks, what's the name of the book?
Of which one? Mine?
He didn't say.
Bueno, Judy Willis has several books. Sorry?
Your book.
My book is called From Passion to Action. From Passion to Action was from the emotion to the ground, let's say, to use the emotion of your student to prepare a lesson that will be memorable. From Passion to Action was the name of it.
Great name for a book.
I'm working on my second book, but it's going to take a lifetime.
All right. We have a couple of questions in here. There's another one, and it says, how important are sports activities for students' learning? And how many hours a week must they do physical activities?
Oh, this is huge. Okay, so there is research already. In these 6 months, there's already research from different universities, for example, as how long the virtual lessons should last. And the research is saying the shorter the better. At least the synchronic lesson should be shorter, especially with the little ones. And the research is also saying, yes, you need to include brain breaks that have movement. Because when you have people moving, basically you recircle the blood, you send more oxygen to your brain, you are more attentive. All these things I'm going to share in my next talk, which is why today I did not include it. But I remember being in Chile and being very worried by one of the laws that they passed that said that tercero media, I think, was going to have less physical activity. And I remember that I was very sorry for that decision, because students need to have at least 3 different moments in the week in which they move. One reason, this is to go and convince the Minister of Education. The frontal lobes, this is the part of your brain, the part where you have your values, where you have your executive function. This part of your brain can only grow with 2 huge things: social interaction and physical activity. So the problem with our adolescents is they are more time in front of a screen, which is they are not interacting socially face-to-face with people, and they are moving less. So instead of going to the pizzeria and buying the pizza, they're picking up the phone and phoning. So this is a problem, because what the science is saying is our frontal lobes are taking longer to develop because of the lack of movement and the lack of social interaction. So I don't want to scare you, but when I started working, this was like almost 20 years ago, the frontal lobes were fully developed by 20 years of age. By 2021, you were considered somebody who had the entire capability of, for example, of being in charge or controlling your emotion. This number has changed in the last 10 years. And now the science is telling us that the frontal lobe is fully developed by the age of 30, which means adolescence is stretching out. And the reason this is happening is because of technology. Technology has changed the way we live. Wow, for the better, yes. But if we don't start conducting the use of technology, we are going to be talking about adolescents that are 40 years old. So this is how important movement is.
So technology could be a friend or a foe, I guess.
Yeah.
And last question about brain breaks. How often should we do brain breaks in 1 hour class?
Okay, please come to my next talk because I will be saying all this. But just to, you know, give you a little taste of it, it depends on the age of your students. Today I was talking to adults, so I could have a brain break every 20 minutes. But this works with sexto básica upwards. But if you are working with kindergarten or with early primary kids, you should be having a brain break every 10 minutes, let's say. The rule of thumb is add 2 minutes to the chronological age. So if you're teaching 4-year-old kids, 4 plus 2 is 6, which means their attention span is 6-7 minutes long. So every 7 minutes, every 6 minutes, do something different and then continue explaining.
Beautiful comments, kind comments for
yes.
your presentation. Very insightful. Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks for your presentation. Hugs and love for you, Lucrecia. Love the webinar. Thanks a ton. You have lots of friends.
Thank you.
She needs more Lucrecia in her life.
Exactly.
Ooh,
Camila
so
Alamo said, I need more Lucrecia in my life.
Oh, Camila, I hope I can meet you. You know what, Camila? Whenever the first plane that leaves my country is going to Chile, okay? That I'm sure of. And I hope I'll be able to meet you. So what you're doing right now by giving me this feedback is tapping into my nucleo accumbens and making me release dopamine. This is why these events are fantastic, because everybody finds a way of staying connected, even through a screen, and it's much better than nothing. So I'm already used to screens, and thank you for inviting me and for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Casey, for your help, and everybody out there. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, by the way.